This is Alex, and welcome to Barely Braided, where we're taking a deep, deep dive into foster care, adoption, and all things parenting, even the sticky stuff. Hello! So this isn't actually going to be a full episode. I'll call it episode 5, but really, I just wanted to jump on super quick and talk about our adoption day. We finalized the adoption of our son, Brooks, now Brooks Ellis, this last week, so like less than a week ago. I know a lot of you have been to adoption days and have been to adoption hearings or adoption court. I don't really know what the technical term for it is, but a lot of you haven't, and a lot of you have an adoption date scheduled or maybe not scheduled, but likely to happen in the future. So I wanted to talk about what we experienced and kind of how that day was for us. A day or two before the adoption hearing was scheduled, our attorney sent us, I believe, a motion for adoption, and in it basically just listed the facts, what had happened when he was born, when he was released from the hospital, when we took physical custody of him, just all of the facts that had happened since the day he was born. She asked us to read over the paperwork and just make sure everything was correct, everything was spelled right, and all the dates were right, and everything was good with the exception of, in the paperwork, she listed my name as Alexandra Ann Geierman Ellis. Geierman is my maiden name, but it's not included in my legal name right now. I just took my husband's last name and didn't keep my maiden name. So I asked her if that was important, and she ended up coming to court with 2 copies of the paperwork, 1 copy that had my maiden name included and 1 copy that didn't. I'm not exactly sure which copy she ended up using in court and which copy will be like the official version, but I believe that on Brooke's official birth certificate that we get back once it's been amended to show that Joel and I are the parents, I think it has to list my maiden name on there, so they probably needed it for that purpose. I know when I've looked back at my birth certificate, it lists my mom's married name when she was married to my dad as well as her maiden name, so I think they needed both of the names to be included. We were scheduled to be at court at 9 a.m. and so the night before, my attorney had sent us an email and she said 2 things. 1, everybody in our party needed to be dressed appropriately for court. And so when I say everybody in our party, she didn't really give us guidelines as to who could be there or who couldn't be there. So I had invited 2 of my really good friends, plus obviously Joel, me, and the baby, and then Joel's parents had also come up to attend as well. So we just had kind of a small group, but I did notice the group that went in before us was absolutely huge. Like they probably had 20 to 25 people in their group. I could not tell who was the family that was adopting, who was the child that was being adopted, because they had several children with them, and I couldn't tell who their attorney was. So I guess it seems like they're pretty lenient as far as the size of your group, whether you have just the parents or a huge, gigantic group of people with you. It seemed like it didn't really matter. As far as being dressed appropriately, she didn't really give us details as far as what that meant. So, of course, I had to Google it, and I had no idea what we were going to wear. I mean, for myself, it's pretty easy because I can wear like kind of a casual dress and pretty much fit in anywhere. But for Joel, it was a little bit more difficult because we were questioning whether or not he had to wear like dress pants or slacks. And it's hard for him because his weight fluctuates so much. So having a pair of dress slacks at all times that fits him well is kind of difficult, and he didn't have one at this point at, his current weight. He ended up wearing really dark colored jeans, a nice like button up dress shirt with a collar, and a black suit jacket. Once we got there, it did not feel like he was underdressed because he was wearing jeans. Many other families that were going into the courtroom were also wearing jeans, or sometimes I see them wearing like jeans or black pants with matching t-shirts with an adoption slogan or like their last name or something on it. So I didn't feel like he was underdressed in jeans once we got there. And then I had to worry about dressing little Brooksy, and this is what I was like most excited about. He ended up wearing like this little dressy onesie, so it was like a plaid pattern, and it buttoned up, and it had a little collar, and it was so cute. And then he just wore like khaki colored dress pant joggers for babies. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it doesn't really matter how much you dress up your infant baby. I kind of feel like the judge wouldn't take that into consideration at all, or like feel offended or disrespected if an infant was not dressed up. We also had brought with us this little Nashville Predators hockey jersey that we had made, and I originally intended for Brooks to wear that during the adoption, but I kind of felt like it would be a little bit more appropriate if he was dressed up during the actual hearing and then we put him in the jersey after. And the reason the jersey is so important to us is because Predators hockey is something that Joel and I like really bond over. It's one of my favorite things to do with him. We love going to watch hockey games, and one of my very favorite memories living in Nashville for like the last 10 years is watching the Stanley Cup games. We haven't yet won a Stanley Cup, but I still have hope for the future, and we just really love watching the games, and it's one of our favorite things to do. So we had a little Predators jersey made. I actually made it on my Cricut, and I put Ellis on the back with the number 4 because Ryan Ellis is a Predators player, and that's his number, and I guess I just thought it was fitting and cute, and so he wore it after the hearing was done. I think we've probably had that jersey laying around since like Brooks was a week old because we were just excited for this day, and we had those plans since like day one. The other thing our attorney prepared us with the night before is the fact that everybody in our party needed to be there present in the courtroom at 8:45, so 15 minutes before the hearing was scheduled to start at 9. If you know anything about my husband and about me, it is that we both hate running late for anything. And he's worse about this than I am because he absolutely refuses to be late for anything. And I have that occasional time where I am running late, but I also hate running late just like he does. So when you're getting yourself and your entire family all dressed up and ready to go and prepared to be somewhere at a certain time, it is not easy with 2 infants, getting one of them to daycare. And that's something I need to mention as well. We chose not to bring our foster daughter to the adoption hearing. I really would have liked for her to be there, but I just felt like it would be too much with 2 babies, the giant stroller, trying to navigate our way through the area where the courthouse is situated. It's in an area where you can't drive up and drop somebody off. You have to park in an underground garage. You have to get in an elevator and find the right building and go through security. And I just thought that at this point, she's 2 months old. You know, she's not the easiest to keep calm. She kind of gets fussy and cries a lot. And I thought it would just be better to focus this day on Brooks. And our babysitter is absolutely awesome and amazing, and I have full trust in her. And so our little foster daughter ended up going to daycare on that day. It happened to be raining pretty hard on that morning, and so we ended up dealing with quite a bit of traffic getting into downtown, like way more traffic than I thought we were going to have to deal with. And then we also needed to navigate where the parking garage was and which elevators to take and how to get up to the room that we needed to be at. And so all of that took a lot longer than we expected. My best piece of advice would be leave extra early. I would have much rather have waited around for like 20 or 30 minutes or even longer than that than doing it how we did it, which is walking in like literally at 8:45 when we needed to be there, because that will stress me out. And I think I stressed out our attorney a little bit too, knowing that we were like right on time, not one bit early. Joel and I ended up driving separately that morning. So I ended up driving his parents and I took Brooks, and then Joel took our foster daughter to daycare and was going to meet us there. It seems like timing never really works in our favor, and probably a lot of people feel that way, but Joel ran across something crazy on his way. After he had dropped off our foster daughter at daycare and he was headed like downtown to court, he came across a really bad car accident. Somebody had T-boned somebody else in the intersection he needed to get through, and it was so bad that all the airbags deployed, and the 2 women that were driving each car wouldn't get out of their vehicles because they were worried that they were hurt. It was raining cats and dogs, and he was like, all dressed up. And so he had to get out of his car and help them and make sure that everybody was okay. And then like somebody else was calling the police. He said that when he was trying to run across the middle of the road to help these people, the other vehicles that were like stuck in traffic or trying to get to work or on their commute or whatever wouldn't even stop to let him run across and make sure these women were okay. And so that was super crazy that happened. And he ended up helping them, making sure that the ambulance was there before he left. And it was just crazy that you only run across those big, crazy incidents where you absolutely need to help when you have something super important scheduled that you need to be at a certain time. He also said that just as the ambulance and the police were pulling up to the scene, that both vehicles started smoking. So I'm glad that he was there, and I'm glad that everybody ended up being okay. And I'm also super glad that we all made it to court on time, because that could have been really bad in a lot of different ways. So after we had all arrived, we were just sitting outside of the courtroom, and they had these big like church pew looking benches, and there were probably 8 or 10 different courtrooms. I would imagine that they were all doing different types of hearings, but my attorney told me that the judge that we were seeing was only doing adoptions that day. And I'm just thinking, if I was a judge that only did adoptions all the time exclusively as my job, that would be like the best job ever. Unfortunately, she said that the judges around here will do all different types of hearings. They just schedule all of their adoptions on one day. So like, best work day ever for that judge. I did not initially realize that if our time was scheduled for 9 o'clock, that doesn't necessarily mean that we are going in at 9 o'clock. Apparently, there were like 3 or 4 families ahead of us that I guess were also scheduled at 9 o'clock, and they ended up going ahead of us. And then there were probably a few that went after us as well. My next piece of advice, and this is not going to be news to any parents, but come prepared, because I am so glad we did. We had a bag full of diapers, wipes, bottles, baby formula, an extra bottle of water, and even some little toys that he could play with. It was definitely necessary to have all that stuff with us, so that way we were able to keep him content and happy and well fed. So he was a smiley, happy little baby when we finally got our time. They finally called us in, and I was super freaking out. I don't know why. I don't know what I expected to go wrong. Probably nothing, but I was still anxious and I couldn't really help it. I kind of knew I was anxious for no reason, but sometimes you're in those situations and you don't know what to expect. You don't know what you're going to have to do or what you're going to have to say. And so I think I was kind of most nervous about that, but it ended up being really no big deal at all. When we walked in, they asked us all to stand like right in front of the judge. Of course, there was like normal courtroom seating that you would see in a movie, but we just all stood right in front of him. And I should mention that the people in the room, it was just us, our little group, the judge, my attorney. There was a woman that was like working for the court. I don't know if she was the judge's assistant or one of the courtroom lady people. And then there was also a woman standing in the back that I don't know what she did, but she opened the door for us every time we needed to come in or leave. So those were the people that were in the room. So we're all standing up there, nervous as crap. Joel is holding Brooks, and our attorney initially started off by telling the judge that she's been in practice for many, many years, but this was her first adoption hearing here in Davidson County. And so she kind of told him that she had hoped that all of her paperwork was accurate, but she was apologizing in advance just in case something wasn't, because things were a little bit different as you go from county to county. He seemed really laid back about the whole thing. He kind of just told her that we would get it figured out, we would get through it, and if there was anything that needed modifying or anything that needed to be changed, he would kind of help her through that and we would get it figured out. The way the judge communicated with my attorney made me feel much more at ease, because he had a really laid back way about him, and he kind of just set the mood that it was going to be a relaxed, kind of easy thing to go through, and it made me feel a lot better once she got started. Next, my attorney told me that she would be addressing me. She asked me to state my full name, so I obviously did. And then she began to ask me questions, or more so, she stated facts and asked me to confirm. So she said that he was born on this day and he was released from the hospital on this day, and this is what happened with the mother, this is what happened with the father. And after each statement she read, she asked me to say whether or not that statement was correct. Again, I was nervous about the dumbest little thing. I didn't know whether or not I should say, yes, ma'am, or yes, that's correct, or just yes, or yes, your honor. I had no idea what to say. So I kind of just said like a combination of those things depending on the statement. And I switched it up a little bit and it seemed to work for her. So that's how that worked. After that, she addressed Joel. She asked him to say his full name, and so of course he did. And then her next question to him was, do you agree with everything that your wife just said? His response back to her was, always. And I'm like, that's a really good answer. You should remember that forever because you just said that in front of a judge. That little exchange probably only took 3 or 4 minutes. It was super quick. And then the judge basically just relayed back to us everything that we had just said to him. So he said, okay, so the baby was born on this day. The mother did this. The father did this. You've confirmed that you're financially able to care for this child. You're emotionally able to care for this child. You will be responsible for him for the rest of your life. Is that all correct? And obviously we said yes. And he said, okay, well then I will be granting this adoption. At this point, Joel was completely bawling and Brooks was just kind of sitting there like his cute little content self. And that was all there was to it. It was over. My attorney asked if we were able to take some photos with him and he agreed to that. So we actually got to go back behind where he sits and they took photos and the judge actually wanted to hold Brooks and he had a little cup of like lollipops sitting on his desk. And so he was trying to give Brooks a lollipop and I'm like, he's 7 months old. Don't give him a lollipop. But they were really cute and he spent some time telling us about his grandchildren because I think he had a grandchild who was also a preemie and in the NICU and was born very, very tiny. And so we kind of got to have like a little bit of a casual conversation with the judge, which was really extremely nice. Another interesting thing that happened is that after we had taken photos, the judge asked Joel if he would email him the photos. And so the judge gave him like his personal email address and Joel just like shot over a few of those photos, which was super cute. And I did not expect that to happen, especially with a judge who has been practicing for a long time. Is practicing the word? I don't know, who has been judging a long time, but he wanted to have copies of those photos as well, which was super cute. The whole process maybe took 10 or 15 minutes. It was super quick, way quicker than I had expected. And I learned that I guess in Davidson County, you do not leave the courtroom with the actual finalized adoption decree. I think that's different in other counties because my attorney seemed surprised by this. She told me that the adoption decree will, I guess, come in the mail, and then I'll also receive an updated copy of his birth certificate. She strongly encouraged paying an extra fee to receive the birth certificate more quickly. I guess you can request an expedited version, and I think it only costs like $5, so we definitely did that. I think the entire cost that I paid to my attorney for adoption day, and this was just for the adoption, not for her services related to the adoption, but it was like $160. The other thing I wish I would have known going into this is that adoption gifts are a thing. I had kind of debated on whether or not I should get some sort of gift for my attorney, but I also figured that I had like paid her all this money, so is it appropriate? I had never done this before. I don't know. Now I'm kind of kicking myself, wishing that I would have brought something for her because she came prepared with gifts for us. She brought us this cute little picture frame and it had one open slot for the adoption photos and then the other slot had a cute little quote about adoption. She also brought a little toy for Brooks, like a little stuffed animal that was super cute, and then she gave us a gift card for Dairy Queen because obviously we wanted to go get ice cream and celebrate. So after that, we were done. We were free to leave. And while we did end up getting blizzards from Dairy Queen later that night, we decided to have lunch at the diner in Nashville. We really like going to the diner, one, because we always have really good service there, but also they have a pretty big menu and we just always have a really good experience eating there. And this time was no different. After lunch, I had made up my mind that I really wanted a piece of cheesecake for dessert. They had like 4 or 5 different kinds and they all looked so good and we were celebrating, so I needed a piece of cheesecake badly. Our server knew that we were celebrating an adoption. We had mentioned it when we had come in. And so the diner actually paid for our desserts for us. And they kind of compared it to a birthday. Like it was kind of like Brooke's birthday. And I know there's a little bit of controversy about that, about like celebrating Adoption Day or celebrating what they call Gotcha Day. But it was just really sweet that they took care of those desserts for us. And so yes, we had both cheesecake for dessert at lunch as well as blizzards later in the day. It was a good day. So that is what our adoption day looked like. And I know it probably looks different for different families depending on where you're located and what the court is like where you are and what you choose to do after. But that's what we did. And it ended up being a really great day. So good of a day that I just had to share it. And I hope you enjoyed listening. I can see myself several times per year, probably for the next 50 years, going back and listening to this just because I want to remember what that feeling felt like and I want to reminisce on that day because it was so incredibly special. And so I'm really glad that I'm able to preserve the memories and kind of keep them fresh, keep them in my mind. And maybe one day Brooks will be able to listen to this episode too. If you have episode ideas or if you'd like to hear something be discussed, feel free to reach out to me. The best way to do that is by using my Instagram account. Send a direct message to @BarelyBraidedPodcast on Instagram. I'm also always looking for guests, so if that's something that you're interested in or you know somebody that you think would make a good guest, feel free to reach out. If you enjoyed hanging out, please, please, please consider leaving a 5-star review on the Apple Podcast app. It really is one of the best ways to spread information about foster care and adoption, and you may be the reason that somebody decides to take the training classes and open their home and be a resource for children that are in need. And also, I would love you forever and ever and ever and ever. Amen, as Randy Travis would say. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.